everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're stepping away from the epic stories of kings, queens, and giant temples to zoom right in on the quiet, everyday rhythm of life in ancient Sri Lanka. Using clues from history and archaeology, we're going to piece together a typical day for a totally ordinary person, just to see how they really lived. And this quote right here, this is pretty much our guiding star for this journey. It was written down by a traveler way back in the 17th century, but he was looking at a way of life that hadn't really changed for ages. It just perfectly captures this whole philosophy of humble sufficiency. It's a world where being content was found in the absolute essentials. This idea of enough is going to be the thread that runs through everything we talk about today. So where does our day even begin? Well, it begins with the sun. Life wasn't run by a clock on the wall, you know? It was all about the natural cycles, light and dark, the changing seasons, and the constant needs of the land. The morning was this amazing blend of spiritual duty and just plain hard work. Okay, so this gives you a kind of roadmap for their day. It all kicked off around 5 a.m. with a prayer, then straight into hours of work. You'd get a much-needed break during the hottest part of the day, then back to work in the afternoon, before things finally started to wind down with some evening rituals and an early night. This was it. This was the fundamental beat of their entire existence. And this is the stage where that life played out. Now forget everything you're picturing about stone palaces. The average home was this brilliant little structure made from whatever was around. The walls were wattle and daub, which is basically just a lattice of woven branches packed with mud. A high, steep, thatched roof kept the monsoon rains out, while the floor was just cool, compacted earth, a huge relief from the tropical heat. And that wide front veranda, the pila, that was the real heart of the home, where so much of daily life happened. So you gotta picture this. The sun's barely up, but the day is already in full swing. It would start with a simple offering at a small family shrine, maybe lighting a little oil lamp. Then, boom, the physical work started right away. Women would be off to fetch water from the local well or the village tank, and getting the fire going for the midday meal, while the men and older kids were already heading out to the fields. I mean, it was a life of incredible physical effort, pretty much from sunrise to sunset. So what kept them going? What fueled all of this? Well, the answer, of course, is in the food they grew and ate, which was totally and completely connected to the world right outside their door. See, to really get a handle on their food, you first have to understand the seasons. Those massive monsoons, they didn't just bring rain. They decided everything. What you could plant, when you could harvest, and ultimately what ended up on your plate for dinner. Their whole year was basically split in two. During the wet maha season, it was all hands on deck. I mean, everyone was out there doing the back-breaking work of cultivating rice in the flooded paddy fields. But then, in the drier yala season, the focus shifted. They'd work on different kinds of land, grow different crops, and it also meant there was a bit more time for other essential stuff, like fixing tools or weaving baskets and cloth. Okay, so I just mentioned Chethana, right? Let's quickly break down what that actually is, because it was a super important survival strategy. It's a kind of slash-and-burn farming they did on the higher ground, places where you just couldn't have a wet paddy field. This let them grow really tough grains like millets, which meant they had a reliable food source even when rice was harder to come by. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This shows you just how much the seasons changed what they ate. In the wet season, life was good. There was plenty of fresh rice, lots of green veggies, and freshwater fish from the irrigation channels that were full to the brim. But come the dry season, they had to rely more on stored stuff, millets, dried fish, lentils, and whatever tubers they could find. It was this constant cycle of feast and famine, and they managed it with incredible cleverness. But no matter the season, that midday meal was the main fuel for the day. It wasn't anything elaborate, usually just a good portion of rice or millet with a simple curry made from greens or lentils. And this was always followed by a rest. It just makes sense, right? You'd take a break during the absolute hottest part of the day, napping or just chilling out on that cool, shaded veranda. All right, so as the day starts to wind down and the sun gets low, the whole focus of life kind of shifts. The work in the fields is done, and life pulls back from the wide open spaces to the warmth of the hearth, the family, and the village community. And just look at this stuff they used every single day. We're not talking about mass-produced goods here. Everything was handmade from what was available. Clay for pots, stone for grinding spices, wood for bowls, reeds woven into mats for sitting and sleeping. Even the rope was made from coconut fiber. This wasn't a world of consumption, it was a world of creation. And this is a really crucial point to grasp. While the men's big fieldwork tasks were often seasonal, the women's work never, ever stopped.
The daily, physically demanding jobs of pounding paddy to get rice, grinding grains for hours, weaving cloth and cooking over an open fire, they were the engine that literally kept the family going, day in and day out.
When it got dark, a different kind of life began. By the flickering light of a coconut oil lamp or a torch, families would finally gather together. They'd share one last simple meal, maybe some millet porridge. And this was the time for mending tools for the next day, for telling stories, often ancient Buddhist tales, and for just reconnecting and strengthening the bonds of family and village life. But it's not like they lived in a total bubble. They were connected to the bigger world of kings and temples through this concept called Raja Karya. Think of it like a tax, but it was rarely paid in money. Instead, you owed a part of your harvest, or, just as likely, you owed a certain number of days of your own labor to work on big projects like maintaining those massive irrigation tanks or building a road.
So let's zoom out one last time to look at the big picture, the philosophy and the economy that held this whole world together, which will bring us right back to where we started.
In this chart, this really tells the whole story of their economy. I mean, just look at how tiny that little sliver for coin use is. The vast majority of life ran on barter and trade. You'd swap your extra grain for some salt from a coastal trader, or maybe trade a few clay pots for a new tool. Wealth wasn't about money in your pocket. It was about your harvest, your skills, and the strength of your relationships in the community. And that really is the world we've just visited. It was a life of nonstop hard work and very simple belongings, for sure. But it was also life that was incredibly rich in community and family, and was all held together by a spiritual rhythm that gave meaning to that daily cycle of sun, work, and seasons. Which brings us all the way back, full circle, to this really powerful idea. This wasn't about a lack of ambition. It was about a completely different definition of what it means to be wealthy. If you had the essentials, the rice you grew yourself and the salt to make it taste good, then you had everything you truly needed. It was a life measured by having enough, not by having more. And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. As we try to navigate our own crazy, complex world, which is so often defined by getting more, what can we learn from this ancient blueprint for a life that was fundamentally defined not by what a person could get, but by what was truly enough?